Yeah, I was going to say this is a meeting to discuss a core, what I would call a core facility for Littleton, and to discuss the future of this particular or buildings. It's the building is the highway department and the equipment, trucks, and that type of thing. The meeting actually is a follow-up from a committee that's been working for about 7 months, at least 7 months, as a result of a visit with the current facility on West Main Street. And that visit kind of grew into a little study about the condition of the current property. And this group of people have worked pretty diligently since June of 2013. There's a group that's met on a regular basis to do the community a service, and that is to determine the status of the current facility and then make recommendations for going forward. So some of the committee members are here this evening. And you're going to see the names, I think, up on the in the PowerPoint presentation. And the objective, I guess you're seeing that now, is as you can see it, is to provide recommendation to the town to address deficiencies in the high operating costs of the existing highway garage. That's kind of the big picture. Then the town supported a warrant article on voting day in March 2013 to do this committee. And then the committee was formed in June, and the first meeting was June 4th, 2013. And I think that next slide is probably going to show us the committee members, some of whom are here tonight. And most of them will be making a presentation of different types. So the committee chairman is Brody Toot, and so we'll let him introduce who the first speaker will be or who the first presenter will be.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. We're going to start off with some garage history, and I'm going to introduce Carl Hildenberg. Thank you.
My name is Carl Hilgenberg. I'm a member of the committee, and I want to give a little background on how this all came about. The purpose is to examine and record. Proven and Lorber was hired by the town to study the town garage. And I'm quoting now from Proven and Lorber's report that they gave the town, and it covers a lot of basis on what we've been working on to decide whether to repair the old garage or replace it with a new one. The purpose was to examine and record the structural condition of the town of Littleton's municipal highway garage building at the located behind the fire station, and to determine the structural properties of the building components and analyze the building to determine its load carrying capacity for comparisons with current building load requirements. They're talking about snow. Specifically, the town wishes to determine how the addition of insulation to the roof of the existing structure will affect the building's performance under snow loading, which are expected to increase as a result of the addition of insulation. That was if the building was going to be renovated and not replaced. The examination was made by Timothy L. Grant, P.E., and James L. Murren, CWS, on October 2, 2012. And after some examination, they have arrived at this conclusion. The prefabricated metal gable-ended variable depth ridged built frame is a Butler TM building manufactured in 1958, and it's made up of both, actually, 36 KSI and 42 KSI steel. The building frame is covered by a metal roof placed over a 2-inch layer of fiberglass insulation. And I will repeat, 2 inches of insulation, sandwiched between a plastic covering. The insulation is compressed and thus rendered largely ineffective between the metal roof and the Z-purlins to which the roof is attached. The Z-purlins span 20 feet of rigid frame and carry the roof loads to the frame of points roughly 4 feet apart. On a building here, the steel girders run every 20 feet, approximately over each door. And a Z-purlin is a thinner structure, a thinner steel beam that runs between the 20 foot, and it's shaped like a Z. So it goes across, it comes back in to the next one, and then across again, and that's the reason it's called a Z-purlin. The existing building was designed and erected in the late 1950s and was never intended to carry snow loads of significant magnitude. Prefabricated buildings of this type were expected to shed snow loads as a result of the heat loss occurring in the lightly insulated roof. The primary intent of the insulation was to reduce the transmission of heat from the roof into the interior of the building in the summer months. Now, the main original section has less than 2 inches of insulation, as I said. A hot roof with the newer, in the back of the building is a 20.5-foot addition that was put on by the high school trades committee school. It's 20.5 foot, and that 20.5-foot addition has 12 inches of insulation in the roof. And the 12 inches at the upper end of then that insulation stops and it meets the old existing roof with 2 inches of insulation in it, and that's the hot roof. So the snow melts off the hot roof, it comes down, it hits the new cold roof, and you have Lake Mead. The water just sits there, dams up, very heavy, and then runs down inside the building and along the back wall. Here in Littleton, the ground snow load in the course of a heavy snow winter is 68 pounds per square foot. The minimum design load for buildings and other structures is 58 pounds per square foot. In other words, if you're going to build a new building and you're going to meet the code, that building has to have a minimum of 58 pounds per square foot. And that is really pretty light. It's not saying that the building couldn't cave in. The unbalanced snow load, which is the unbalanced means between one side of the roof and the other, whether it's south or north facing, the unbalanced snow load on the present highway garage is only 18 pounds per square foot, far short of 58 pounds per square foot required. And that's on the leeward side. It's 17.3 pounds per square foot on the windward side. This measurement is at the center of the Z purlins, which I've just described to you, that extend 20 feet to the ridge poles. The police building on the looking at the slide here, the police building on the left is well insulated. It's a new building, just a few years old, and you can see the snow is still on the roof. None of it's melted off, and that wasn't even a very cold day. This was a fairly warm day. And this is the highway garage, the existing highway garage, and look at that roof. There's not a drop of snow on it. It's absolutely bare. If insulation is added to the roof of the existing building, the building can be expected to fail, possibly in a catastrophic fashion under a load under as little as a third of the currently required snow load. This building has exceeded its intended life and is not readily upgraded to modern standards. Provident Lorber, quote, unquote. Due to the significant heat loss experienced by this lightly insulated building and the increasing cost of heating fuels of all kinds, replacement of the existing inefficient oil burner is recommended for the short term. That was done later, but we did a pellet boiler instead. And I think the furnace in there is fairly new, isn't it? Yeah. For this reason, and due to the plethora of other problems in the existing structure, we believe, Provident Lorber's again quoting, we believe it advisable for the town to plan for the replacement of the garage in as near a future time as possible. And that's the conclusion that this committee has come to, and we're recommending that the town pass upon vote and vote in favor of the new building, which will be explained to you now. Brody?
Okay, I'm going to now introduce Jim McMahon as we're going to go over the next section.
Okay, and just to recap, in 2012, the Public Works Director at the time had noted some deficiencies. So prior to the Provan and Lorber study, they noticed water leakage, cosmetic gaps, material loss, as shown in this lower right-hand corner around the base plates. And they had some high heating costs. Obviously, as they show up to work, they see that there's no snow on the roof. So all that heat's coming out of the structure and is causing a fairly high fuel bill during the winter months. Also, they had some concerns with limited workspace and vehicle storage that wasn't addressed in the Provan and Lorber report. However, it is a note in 2012 when they engaged Provan and Lorber, they decided to at least address these main items here. So in the next slide, Carl had already covered most of the structural engineer report results. They did repair the water leakage, they did repair the cosmetic gaps, and once you started talking about cleaning the existing base plates, welding, steel reinforcement, and painting, as well as the recommendation that they can insulate the building, started looking at other options, saying, well, if we're going to rehab this building and we can't get it to code, maybe we should explore other options. And this is the formation of, or the reason for the formation of the committee, was to explore those other options. This is a picture of the ribbon cutting ceremony. Selectman Seymour, Steve Kelly, and Ray Burton. So there was some forethought in having this complex be connected, having a central heating source, and this was just completed this fall, so several months ago. So the majority of the report results, the ones that the town could take care of, have been completed. It's the major stuff that the committee had to tackle as far as rehab or replacement. Also, the technical information which Carl was referencing as far as snow loads and things like that, it's a published document, and this was published in February of 2002, and as you can see from the previous slides, the building was erected in 1958. So obviously in 1958 they didn't know or didn't have the information in order to design a building to meet 2002 recommendations. So that's where this comes into play. Next slide. So we explored options. We reviewed the report. We developed priorities. I think at every meeting we ended up with hit lists for each person. We had questions that needed answered, so we came up with what we wanted for the next session. So we were very organized. We talked to the DPW staff. We were involved with the town. We had the DPW workers in for lunchtime presentation. We went over some of the information that was in here. Just got a feel for what they needed, especially when you started talking about workspace, future capacity, things like that. We came up with 3 options. First option was no action, which meant that we were in reaction mode. So we were hoping that this was thrown out because there's too much liability and risk with having that sort of reaction mode. You would be waiting for a big snow event. You'd be waiting for a chance where you weren't out there pulling the snow off the roof. That ponding that Carl was talking about, things like that. You'd be in reaction mode, and there would probably be high risk to the town, and it would be probably a safety concern, most likely a safety concern. Option 2 is limited upgrades and rehab. When we start talking about reinforcing members, grinding things down, increasing their capacity, things like that, they can be done, but you really don't get much life out of it. Meaning that when you compare everything together, for instance, usable work areas and heated floor space and things, you'd be talking about adding on to this existing structure, adding on to the members, and you've already exceeded the life expectancy of the prefab, the Butler building, and now it's time to consider something else. And so option 3 was what we went with, and that's we all felt very strongly about that. You can spend a little bit of time and a little bit of money over the course of the years, but I think it's probably time.
Are you missing another option? Is extensive upgrade, where you go in and reinforce it so it meets codes and all that without?
That would be option 2. You would bring it up to code.
Limited.
Yeah.
What's the cost of that versus the cost of replacement?
Well, we had that option, but we would have had to retain a structural engineer to come in, come up with plans, and at the end of his analysis, you may find out that
You may, you didn't get numbers on what it costs?
no, we did not. But I think over time, you'll see that it's already exceeded its life expectancy. And to force those members, you're talking about a lot of steel being bolted and welded up to the top of that structure.
You know, when I was 13 and 14 years old, we built something just down the road, and it's still there, still open,
Yeah.
and still operating, made out of wood.
Yeah. Well, just back up one slide. See if I can handle this. Yeah. We wanted to also address the heating costs, where if we're going to do something, we'd
What
want
are
to...
those numbers compared to
numbers for it.
replacement?
We don't have those.
It's all opinion.
Correct.
I can address that.
Yeah.
I think it's good to have questions, because I think that's kind of why we're doing this. Some of this information, or one of the reasons for the meeting, is basically to see if there's information that people are looking for, and I think that's really a great question. They may not have everything tonight.
It was an additional expense
Right.
the committee would have had to encumber
Right.
to come up with those answers.
Right. But I think it's noteworthy, though, to bring that up, because when we get to the town, when we're presenting it to the town, that's going to be the critical time. Did you want to let maybe Kyle can add a little something here?